If you're anything like me, you have 1,000 reasons to dislike the phrase code of conduct. Well, get ready to make that list 1,001 because, oh my gosh, the Python Software Foundation just did something utterly ridiculous. And I need to say this very clearly before we start. This is not a joke. This is not a piece of biting satire. This is 100% real, 100% factual. I've double checked it every which way from Sunday. This is legit. I'm going to read this to you now. Try to make your head not explode. The Python Software Foundation has just suspended one of their most prominent developers for, and I kid you not, finding a classic SNL sketch, quote, genuinely funny. In fact, it's even worse than that. We'll get into that. This is not a joke. This is a real thing that is happening right now. Now, to put all of this in context, it's important to understand the person who the Python Foundation just suspended. Tim Peters, many of you will be familiar with, won the Python Distinguished Service Award back in 2017. And I'm going to let the Python Software Foundation tell you how much they absolutely love Tim Peters in their own words. This is their quote from when they gave him the award in 2017. Quote, Tim's technical contributions to Python are immense, as he implemented several modules into the standard library. Some examples include TimSort, doctest, and the Tim in the TimeIt module. Furthermore, Tim contributed to the Python cookbook by writing the chapter on algorithms. Tim also has contributed to the Python community. He wrote the Zen of Python via PEP20 back in 2015. He reached approximately 1 million people via his answers on Stack Overflow. Moreover, Tim was an active Python Software Foundation board director from 2001 through 2014, meaning that he volunteered on the board for 13 years. Additionally, Tim has contributed to many Python mailing lists and has been known to always contribute in a friendly, funny, and helpful way, end quote. Now, it is hard to imagine a more glowing recommendation for how important a person could be to the world of Python. This guy's been around since essentially the beginning of Python. And this only scratches the surface of Tim Peters' time with Python. It's off the charts. Now, I want you to bear all of that in mind as we look at why the Python Software Foundation just suspended him. Okay. On August 7th, just a few days ago, the Python Software Foundation's Code of Conduct Working Group, many of you were like, well, red flag right there, recommended a suspension of Tim Peters, which was then implemented. Now, some of the reasons for the suspension, they gave a list, are pretty wild. They're pretty crazy. I'm going to list my 3 favorite ones, right? I'm going to list my 3 favorite ones. And I want to be very clear. These are actual reasons that they suspended Tim Peters, one of the most prominent Python people, from the Python Software Foundation. Okay, the first reason, quote, defending reverse racism and reverse sexism, concepts not backed by empirical evidence, which could be seen as deliberate intimidation or creating an exclusionary environment, end quote. All right, so let's back up a little bit here. This is a common but crazy rule in many open source organizations. Defending reverse racism, in quotes here, is expressly forbidden in lots of organizations, including GNOME. Like GNOME has a specific rule. You cannot express reverse racism. Now, what is reverse racism? It is the idea that white people cannot experience discrimination. Or can experience discrimination. Sorry, let me make sure I get this clear here because the idea is insane. The idea is that white people can experience discrimination, right? So if you even suggest that anyone has ever discriminated against a white person, you are, by definition, defending reverse racism. It's weird, I know. That will get you banned from GNOME and Python, apparently, and so many other organizations. Crazy. It's crazy, but it's true. Now, what's even more crazy here, though, and this is the part that blows my mind, isn't this stupid rule. It isn't the fact that the concept of reverse racism even exists. Put all that to the side for a moment. But the really crazy thing here is Tim didn't do any of this. I could find no example of Tim Peters actually defending reverse racism in any way. This appears to be made up entirely as far as I can tell. It is, right? So whatever your thoughts on reverse racism, no matter what your thoughts are, it's irrelevant because Tim didn't do anything related to it. So it's just kind of this made up gobbledygook thing. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But that brings us to the second one. And this one, I had to blink like 47 times and do a Monty Python style double take before I fully believed that this was an actual real reason. Quote, using potentially offensive language or slurs, in one case, even calling an SNL skit from the 1970s using the same slur, quote, genuinely funny, which shows a lack of empathy towards other community members. I'm not kidding here. This is an actual cited reason for the suspension of one of the most prominent members of their community, that he found an SNL sketch funny. Yeah. Now, what is that SNL sketch they're referring to? Well, this is the famous Point Counterpoint 1979 sketch starring Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin. The one where Dan Aykroyd says the phrase, and I'm quoting here, "Jane, you ignorant slut." Now, I can say that out loud because I don't have any sponsors, so I can say whatever I darn well please, and I don't really consider that to be a naughty word. Now, why is that SNL sketch even being mentioned? Why does it matter? Why does this come up at all? Well, because there was a Python package that was named Slut. This is a thing that happened. You can go look this up. It was a big deal. There was much gnashing of teeth over it. And the name of that Python package was censored, right? So it was a censored name. It was originally Slut, and then they censored it, right? And Tim Peters was referring to that package and the fact that it was censored. And he was trying to not say the word slut. Right? See, he wasn't trying to say the word itself, but instead he was referencing the SNL sketch where the word is said. So seriously, that is a bannable offense within Python. That is crazy. The fact that he referenced a Saturday Night Live sketch from 1979 that had a word in it, slut, which I've said now more than I think Tim Peters has ever said, simply referencing that word instead of saying it, referencing that sketch instead of saying the word, will get you banned from Python. Now, the other thing is the Python Software Foundation Code of Conduct Working Group stated that he went even goes so far as to calling that sketch that uses the slur genuinely funny. Now, here's the funny thing about that. If you and I'm gonna come back to this, but I reached out to Tim. He didn't actually call the sketch genuinely funny. He did find it funny, but he didn't actually call the sketch funny. So this is great. He simply alluded to the existence of the sketch, and that got him banned. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right. I want to make this clear though before we move on. The Lunduke Journal has an official position. The Lunduke Journal has never taken an official position on a Saturday Night Live sketch before, but we are now. That specific 1979 sketch starring Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin, funny. We declare it to be actually funny. Officially, Lunduke Journal finds that sketch funny. Yep. There we go. All right, I'm going to read one more reason here, because this reason, while not having anything to do with the Saturday Night Live sketch, is patently absurd, and it just needs to be called out here. Quote, overloading the discussion of the bylaw change 47 out of 177 posts in the topic at the time the moderators closed the topic, which created an atmosphere of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which encouraged increasingly emotional responses from other community members. The later result of the vote showed 81% support for the most controversial of the bylaws changes, which demonstrates the controversy was blown out of proportion. Okay, now if you're following that along, that seems a little weird, right? Here's a short version. There was a proposed change to the Python bylaws. Tim Peters, one of the most prominent Python contributors in existence, according to the Python Software Foundation itself, had lots of thoughts about one of those changes to the bylaws. But Tim's opinions were not supported by the board of the Python Software Foundation, and he made the mistake of talking about his opinions more than the powers that be wanted him to. So he was suspended from the project. In essence, Tim Peters was suspended for wrongthink. He went against the wishes of the ruling class of the Python Software Foundation, and he said things too many times, so he got ousted. Now, let's look at that Python bylaw change for a second here. By the way, there were 3 changes to the Python bylaws, and they were passed and implemented or have just recently been implemented. But there was one change in particular which caused most of the discussion, and I'm going to read it to you now so that you have the full context here. Quote, allow for removal of fellows by a board vote in response to code of conduct violations, removing the need for a vote of the membership. Okay, so what does that actually mean? So up until now, a fellow of the Python Software Foundation, right, which is basically an exalted class, right, a super member, if you will, a fellow could only be removed by a vote of the Python Foundation membership, right? A big public vote of all the members, not just the board, but everybody in the Python Foundation. Everyone who is a member and has a membership, they would get a chance to vote on whether or not that fellow needed to be ousted, needed to be removed and kicked out, right? It was a big public procedure. Now, this bylaw change removed that public vote, instead allowing any Python fellow to have their fellowship status stripped by an affirmative vote of the majority of the board of directors, right? So now, why would this change be needed, you ask? Well, what it does is effectively it takes power away from the public membership of the Python Software Foundation and moves that power to a small group who can exercise that power predominantly in secret, motivated by the Code of Conduct Working Group within the Python Software Foundation. This is essentially a power grab. This is a power grab of the Code of Conduct Working Group working in conjunction with the Board of Directors of the Python Software Foundation. Now, Tim Peters objected to this change with 47 total comments or replies in a discussion on the topic. Now, they created a discussion on the topic, a forum topic, specifically for people to discuss it. Tim posted original comments or replies to comments 47 times, right? So he had a lot to say on the topic. But apparently, that 47 number was too large a number. Tim was, according to Python, too active in that discussion, right? And we can't have people being active in discussions now, can we? Holy heavens. Especially when those people are not being 100% supportive of those in power. Oh my gosh. A person who the Python Software Foundation has recognized as being extremely active in conversations, super helpful, super nice, warm and funny, praised every which way from Sunday, and is so active in conversations that the Python Foundation gave him an award, is now banned because he was being active in a discussion. What in the fart is going on here? So now, a legitimate question I think here is, how many total comments is a person allowed to make in a conversation, right? If a discussion is happening, a debate is happening, how many times is a person allowed to speak before they are banned from Python? Is the number 46? Did he simply speak one too many times? Is it 35? Is it 20? How many? What's the number here? Clearly there is a number, but there does not appear to be a hard limit documented anywhere in the Python Code of Conduct. And yet they cite the Code of Conduct for removing him entirely and suspending him from the project. This is insane. This is insane. This is absolutely nuts. And here's the thing. All of this feels really familiar. This feels extremely familiar. A prominent developer and contributor banned or suspended from a project by people using the Code of Conduct as a weapon against him. Real familiar, doesn't it? In fact, I linked to 3 different articles that are clearly similar to this. Remember NixOS? Remember issues with OpenSUSE, and on and on and on. And likewise, we sure do seem to be having a big rash of open source boards making moves to centralize their power in secret meetings. Doesn't that seem to be a thing that's happening a lot? Like, we just saw this happen with the GNOME Foundation just a couple of weeks ago, where they literally voted in secret to kick out one of their own board members and didn't tell a single person in the entire GNOME Foundation, the whole membership. Everyone was kept in the dark for over 2 months. 2 months. And they only told people about it because they were about to get found out about it, right? This is a thing that's going on right now, and it kind of causes you to tilt your head to the side and cock an eyebrow up and scratch your noggin a little bit. So the Lunduke Journal had a lot of questions. I have a ton of questions, a huge amount of questions. So I reached out to everyone involved, including both Tim Peters and members of the Python Software Foundation, for comment and with a list of questions. No representative of Python responded after multiple days. Not a peep. Total dead radio silence. They went incommunicado. They buried their hand in the sand. Tim Peters, however, did respond. Good on him. His response to my questions I've included below in full and without comment from me. I'm just going to read my questions to him and exactly verbatim what he responded to me with. All right, so here's the full email response from Tim. So I asked him, do you feel that the 3-month suspension, which is what he got, they suspended him for 3 months, but it kind of, with the additional adding of the ability of the board to get rid of people permanently without, going to the community for a vote and entirely based on the Code of Conduct, it kind of looks to me like they're gunning for getting rid of Tim permanently. But I digress. Do you feel that the 3-month suspension was justified and reasonable? Tim responded with, no comment at this time. Chris McDonough wrote a detailed blog post that may or may not, winky smiley face, closely reflect my view of it all. And I've linked to that as well here, so you can go read that. It's called The Shameful Defenestration of Tim. It's worth reading because it goes into many of the details of the inner workings of the Python Software Foundation more than my article does here. It's very long, and if you really want to dive into the nitty-gritty, the inside baseball of Python Software Foundation mechanics and governance, it's worth reading. And then I asked him, considering the recent rule change where the Python board can remove members without a public vote, do you anticipate such action being taken against you? Tim responded simply with, not against me, no. And then I said, or others? And he responded, absolutely yes. The discussion of the rule change made that very clear. There are people they want to strip of fellow status, but it seems these are due to very local incidents not known to the larger Python community, and more substantial than run-of-the-mill somebody posted an offensive word complaints. While no specifics were revealed, I believe them on these points, end quote. All right, fair enough. Now, I also wanted to say, Tim followed up with me, and I don't have that included here in the article, but he followed up with me because I sent him a copy of the article, and I said, hey, Tim, if there's anything that's wrong in here, let me know, right? Because I want to make sure this is as accurate as possible. So I'm gonna scroll up here a little bit. And he confirmed with me the defending reverse racism thing. He never actually talked about reverse racism, as far as he knew. He was like, no, this is not something I was talking about. He was not defending reverse racism, but they added that in there anyway for some reason. I supposedly so that they can call Tim Peters racist, which is very, very weird. Those are my words, not his. But then he also mentioned the SNL skit thing. Because according to the Python Software Foundation statement, Tim said, quote, he even called a SNL skit from the 1970s using the same slur genuinely funny. Apparently, and he pointed this out to me, he never actually said that. He actually said that that was a sketch from back when Saturday Night Live was funny. Which I think is a pretty fair and commonly held belief that Saturday Night Live used to be funny and isn't quite so much anymore. That's a pretty commonly held belief. In fact, a lot of people consider that era to be kind of the golden era of Saturday Night Live. We can debate about that till the cows come home, but the general gist is he never actually called that sketch funny. So he got banned for calling a sketch funny that he didn't call funny. But he did confirm to me that he does indeed find that sketch funny. He never said it in any of these forum threads or anything, but he does indeed find that sketch funny. But he got banned for it, even though he never actually said that. Fascinating. This is fascinating that all of this is happening. And it's amazing that we get example after example of codes of conduct being weaponized against the membership of these foundations. I mean, we saw Gnome outright ban people for using the word Lunduke, right? Like that's now an official bannable offense within the Gnome Foundation. If you use the word Lunduke or link to a Lunduke article, you get banned. And they're willing to weaponize that strange code of conduct-y rule on some of their most prominent developers. I mean, one of the GNOME package maintainers for Manjaro got banned from forums and all sorts of stuff just for linking to one of my articles. It's crazy stuff is happening. You'd think with so many examples of these code of conduct issues happening where they get weaponized by a minority of individuals who seem to be seeking to get themselves on some sort of power trip where they're specifically hurting and banning membership of the projects that they are overseeing and sworn to protect, and it goes so poorly, and then the Lunduke Journal covers it and it goes even worse, and then that project comes up with some sort of let's ban Lunduke rule. Like this is an ongoing pattern here. NixOS did it. They banned me outright before I even joined the project. Like they literally banned Lunduke from the project when I wasn't part of the project. The GNOME Foundation banned everyone from even mentioning my name. This sort of thing keeps happening. And they get so much bad press for it. And people start screaming about, I will never use this project again because of how this project treats human beings. You would think that these board members and these code of conduct working group teams, they would learn their lesson. They would stop using these codes of conduct in a weaponized fashion to bully and intimidate and harass people, because that is clearly what's happening here. You would think they would learn that lesson. But maybe they have learned that lesson. Maybe they're doing all of this on purpose all along. Maybe they're smart enough to when they first started creating the Code of Conduct Working Group, that was the ultimate goal. I don't know. But they certainly seem to keep doing it. And this latest one with the SNL sketch thing, I mean, come on, this is insane. This is patently crazy. And they keep on doing it. They keep on doing it. So to Tim Peters, good on you. Good on you for responding. Good on you for standing your guns. Good on you for being part of and worrying about the community that you are a part of. So thumbs up. Thumbs up from the Lunduke Journal. To the Python Software Foundation. Knock it off. What the heck are you guys doing? This is not too late to fix this. Just undo this suspension, clarify why it was made, figure out who did the suspension, get rid of them, because clearly you're fine with getting rid of people, and let's move on. Excuse me. I got all worked up. I'm verklempt. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, oh, holy heavens, I do declare and broadcast, I need a drink.